today's episode where we are going to be tackling PTSD, and I am your host, Sylvia Kuria. And before we continue, we're first going to go to Danson, who is going to be introducing our guest today.
Guys, so my name is Danson Mbugua. I'm a youth deacon at PCEA Kefah Township, and today our guest is Kefah, and I would like him to tell us who he is.
So my name is Mbugua, known as Kefah. I am an emergency medical technician, an emergency medical instructor, and an aeromedic. So I'm part of the frontliners. I work with Swift paramedics.
Awesome. So basically, you deal with fast, responding to emergencies.
Yes, that's what we do in our day-to-day lives.
Earlier on, when we posted about mental health on our Facebook page, you volunteered and stated that you would like to tell your story.
So I would like to share my story with colleagues and also victims of PTSD to know that it's okay not to be okay. And with time, everything will be just fine. You just need to hang on there. And all is well.
Great. Seeing the fact that you're already here with us, that means that you're psychologically sort of prepared to share the story.
Yeah, I'm here because the first process of healing is accepting who you are. And also the best way to heal is the more you share it out, the more it leaves your mind and leaves you at peace. And also is to help others realize that mental health is something that you can have it, and with time you can heal. It's not permanent.
Awesome. That's really deep. So if you don't mind, you can share the story.
So I realized I have a problem in the year 2017. I started working in July 2017. Worked as a paramedic. As I was working, I didn't know how to manage stress, and so most of the time we could have a bad day, lose somebody in the ambulance, see the agony of a mother's cry to the child. You have nothing to do but try and save the life. But what happens when the baby girl dies, or you lose somebody in the ambulance, or when you respond to a call, you find somebody's already dead? So personally, I didn't know how to handle the stress. So I used to be like, this is going to be part of me, so lazima nizoe. So with time, that habit of saying that I'll get through this part of me, I just need to hang on there. I didn't realize that it will one day come and put me off. I had a mental breakdown where I started becoming so anxious when I respond to calls, especially traumatic calls. Because remember, PTSD happens when whatever the traumatic events keep occurring. So between July, August was fine, but later on in the end of August, I started feeling like it's like I'm losing myself. So I had to look for a way of putting off that energy away. Once you have a bad day, how am I going to help myself? So I chose to start drinking. So I started drinking by then. I thought alcohol will help me, but unfortunately it messed me up. Because the same year I lost my job.
That's 2017. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I lost my job due to intoxication. So you'll go for a call, having a bad day, unaamua acha niende nitoe lock pale kwa and spirits anakupeka half kanudhu.
Mm-hmm.
And then maisha inaendelea, so it became a habit. So in the same year, I got into a relationship. that was toxic. The biggest challenge a medic may have is having someone who will not understand that most of the time you're preoccupied with the work. When you're off, you need time to sleep, you need time to refresh, do your laundry, so you don't have time for partners. So the person ahead didn't understand that. So it affected also my mental stability, because the following year she was expectant. So what she did, she flushed the baby. It was very hard to bear. I've lost my job, I've lost my kid, so still not talking to anyone. I remember that day, hiyo time nilikuwa nafanya job as a paramedic. I don't think there was one time I was sober, because in the morning you go eat 12 and then you go and sleep. So ukitumwa for a road traffic accident, when you're back you've seen blood, you're like, this is too much, why all this every time? So it's a challenge, because I know there are people who are out there, maybe they're like me, medics, and they don't know how to deal with the issues. The challenge comes in when people tell you it's part of you, and the society expects you to be strong, yet you're human enough. Because at the same time, if you see a mother crying because the child is losing her life or the child is deteriorating, you become too attached. And also, the time when you lose a patient, you're like, I did my best. The times you start questioning yourself, why, what did I not do? So you start beating yourself. If I had done this, or if we could have rushed, maybe, probably, we could also have saved the life. Also, something else, people think running an ambulance is fun. It's not fun, because you're going at a speed of 120, at times 160. At times you see death by your eyes. Msi anafanya tu blanda kwa road, you're like, ama umehata bump kwa 140, gari na bounce, you don't know if you land well or mta crash. So at times also that really disturbed me. And then the period when I lost my job, now the siren part, we call it the siren syndrome, affected me also, because I was used to hearing the siren. So after that, I can't hear it again. And also something funny is I got, after losing my job, I really wanted to see blood, because now it was a way of also helping me relax. But if I could not see blood, real blood, not on movies, real blood, so it became a challenge. So after that, so January, baby is flushed.
Yes, sorry, let me just pause you kidogo. But when you say that you wanted to see blood, did you actually get to see it?
Yeah, at times I would have a chance to see it.
Where?
I will go to just any hospital, just pass by the ER, and I'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So basically, lost my child. So the baby has been flushed. I didn't ask questions. I said it is well, because so it has happened. So what answer could I get? So I got employed again, worked with SGR as a safety officer. Lost my job also. I was still drinking then, but it was not as I was drinking before. Yeah, at least it was manageable. But when I lost my job after 2 months, I joined the county.
Sorry, but why did you lose the job?
I lost my job because of also partly drinking and absenteeism.
Mm-hmm.
So at times, if because of too much too much consumption of alcohol, at times it will make you have a mental breakdown. And maybe most of the time when I was absent is maybe I would stay a week without taking alcohol. So I remember that week when I lost my job, I was shivering in the house. I was just alone because now it's the withdrawal symptoms because of being an addict. Yeah, and then so I don't know, they lost because of absenteeism. Because pale ukiwa na too many absenteeism, they just take you just need to go home. So after a few weeks, after like 3 days, I was employed at the county government of Kiambu as an emergency medical dispatcher. It was fine there. It was okay. But now the challenge was when now going home. So when I used to go home to my house, just think of just passing by to take a drink. So it became a norm. And so I'm back to being a first responder.
Yes.
Now I'm on phone.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't change anything.
Mm-hmm.
At times you'd want to look for an ambulance. You cannot get any. Mm-hmm. Most of them zimekuwa spoiled ama they're engaged. Mm-hmm. So what happens when somebody tells you, if I can't get an ambulance in the next 30 minutes, the lady, the mother and the baby will die. Mm-hmm. So it was very hard for me to grasp that. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, I'm still human enough. Mm-hmm. So at times they made it, or they had to do a quick emergency there. Or at times maybe you're called, there's an accident along Waiteithi, Juja. Mm-hmm. There's no ambulance engaged also. You've been told it's a crazy accident. What do? You can't just walk out of the office because your hands are tied. Mm-hmm. So it really disturbed me so much. So I working at the county, I remember there's one time I decided to go to the morgue because I really missed seeing people who are dead.
Morgue?
Yes.
Like the real morgue?
Yes, the real morgue.
Man of God? Or
morgue, mortuary. Okay. So it was also a way of, as in when I just see dead people, I'll be satisfied. I feel that anxiety has left. So it's been a journey.
And how long was that phase?
Between 2017 to 2019. So those are about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2018, still there, the county working. Mm-hmm. Tried to manage, but now the drinking became too much now. Mm-hmm. And then after the next year I decided to quit my job. I wanted to establish myself. Okay. So I started training, and I'm still training up to now, and I'm glad I'm better than I was. Mm-hmm. Because at least now part of training makes you talk about your story.
Mm-hmm. So sorry, but training people in terms of...
Yeah, I train people in terms of first aid, fire, and health and safety. Okay. And also I train my fellow EMTs, paramedics. Okay. Yeah, so that really has helped me enough to change and to become a better person in the society. Okay. And also having a partner that I'm really grateful of, who has helped me on my journey since 2019 to now. I'm better because the support system that you may have is also a determinant to how you'll deal with your issues. Mm-hmm. So part of that journey was fun, was unless I'm not ashamed of talking about it and saying it was fun, because you experience something most people experience and they don't know how to share it or how to handle it. Mm-hmm. And I thank God I have friends. Part of 2019 and 2018, we decided to have a group of EMTs who we talk about how if we have a bad day, you can come and talk to us, talk to me. So at least having that support system that maybe if it was there, maybe I could not have reached where I was. But now at least moving on, life has become much better. Yeah, that's my story.
Wow. There's a question that is ringing in my mind. When all of this was happening, was your family aware about it?
I will not say my family was aware, because that's most of the time you're alone. So it's a fact that when you're going through something, people may see and ignore. So remember, I was not sharing my problems. Because I never used to see my family for a very long time, because I just needed to have that time with me. And at times you're like, if this guy see me like this drunk, and then you're like, they'll start asking questions, why this, why that. So the challenge is the medics, the families also have a lot of questions to ask, because what I know, most of them don't share. As I said, support system. You cannot tell me I'll share this whatever I've been going through with someone who is not been into the field, medical field, hataelewa. Because remember, utakuwa na zile aspect za you chose that career, so I think it's supposed to be part of you, so you need to know how to deal with the challenges. And then I remember one time I sought help from a friend who is a counselor.
Okay.
But unfortunately, that person backed me off. And so counseling to me was a no-go zone for me. Because that person bashed me out and told me that because you chose this career, you have to learn how to live with it. So telling me how to learn with it is the most difficult thing, because it's not supposed to be part of me.
Sure, it's not supposed to be part.
Yeah, so mental health or PTSD is not supposed to be part of everyone.
Yes.
PTSD is not just for medics also, but for any person who is a frontliner, the police, the firefighters, the doctors and nurses. Because we tend to want to deal with it, or we want to look for a way of running away from whatever we're feeling. So the point of me was, I guess I was in denial.
Yes.
Which up to now I will not be ashamed of saying, yes, I messed up. I could have changed the moment I realized that I needed help. But it's never too late to choose ways. There's always a reason for everything, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kefah, for being bold and sharing your story. It's not something that many people, will be bold enough to share, especially on camera. I like the fact that you have decided to express your journey and also express some of the things that you're using to help you come out of PTSD, such as the trainings, as you've stated, and also encouraging other people in the same profession, frontliners, and also coming up with a social support group. It's something that we will encourage. And is there one last thing that you like to ask or to say?
Yeah. As I conclude, I'll say being depressed does not make you inhuman, and it doesn't make you weak. It makes you much stronger, and it's not at the end of the life. So it's just need to hang on, keep fighting. As I always say, it's okay not to be okay. Don't fight too hard on yourself. Just take one day at a time. one day you'll be like me, standing back on your feet. It's nothing permanent. So just hang on there. Don't give up.
Thank you. So that is Kefah. And I know that probably there are so many other people who are undergoing PTSD or have in the recent past come out from this journey. I would like to encourage you, speak about it, seek intervention. It is not something that you should live with. There's a solution. Hang on there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danson, for introducing us to Kefah and for giving him an opportunity to share his story. Today, I'm going to also reintroduce you to our panel that has been with us since episode 1. Karibuni sana. Just for the new viewers' sake, kindly introduce yourselves.
Hi guys, my name is Maki Nyanjui. I am a student pursuing a degree in information sciences at Moi University, and I'm also a sports journalist. Thank you.
My name is Nancy Wanjiru Kabiru. I'm a mental health champion, founder and lead psychologist at Hisia Psychology Consultants.
I'm Grace Gashanja, a psychologist at Chiromo Mental Health Hospital and also a youth deacon at PCEA Kikuyu Township Parish.
Okay, you're very welcome. And Mark, could you kindly explain to us what is PTSD?
In my opinion, PTSD is an anxiety disorder. Under natural circumstances, we may all fall subject to traumatic events. And when that happens, it's natural to feel afraid, to be scared. But when you're suffering from PTSD, you find yourself in a situation where how you react to events like this is not how you would react under normal circumstances. You find yourself in a situation where even when you are not facing a traumatic event, you may tend to feel scared all the time and other signs and symptoms like that. So I think that's my understanding of PTSD.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your definition. And now we're going to go to Grace, who's going to give us a more professional understanding and definition of what PTSD is.
PTSD, also known as post-traumatic stress disorder, is a mental health condition that occurs when someone goes through a terrifying event. Now, this can be as a result of you being part of the event. That is when you go through it yourself, when you see it happening, that is like witnessing a car accident or a fight. Or also, it can also occur if someone close to you has been affected by a traumatic event. Yeah, so that's what PTSD is all about.
All right, thank you very much for that. Nancy, causes and what is more causes and who is more prone to getting PTSD, and what is the exception?
So the cause for PTSD is something that happens sudden. You were not expecting, and then it is traumatic. Okay. So who is more prone? This could be people in the front line, like first respondents to an incident. So when we say it's a terrifying event, it is sudden, you are not expecting, what comes to your mind? What do you think of? You think of an attack to yourself or to people around you. Could be terrorism, or could be maybe flash floods where a lot of people die. So the first respondents, those are the medics, or the police, or the journalists. Those are the people who are more prone to getting affected by PTSD. The other person who could be affected by PTSD is the one who has experienced it. So if the attack was to you, and when we talk about you, we talk about situations such as rape or violence. So it happened to you as an individual. When we talk about if you witnessed it, say you're a child and you witnessed maybe thieves had come to steal from your house, then they decided to rape someone in the house, then there at that point you're a witness. If it is a terrorism attack, you witnessed. That means you still fall under that category. And if you hear what we share, if you hear a close family or friend has experienced it, then it can affect you. Or someone you have emotional affection for, that can make you get PTSD. You asked what is the exception. Generally, there is no exception because when it is tragic, we have no control. When it is sudden, we have no control. But there are factors that can make you more strong to deal with the situation, and other factors that make you more weak to deal with the situation. So normally, PTSD will start as an acute stress. And this would kick in within that day to the 30th day. And PTSD would be after the 30th day. That is when we say you have those signs and symptoms of PTSD. So someone who has gone through a tragic incident, then most people diagnose them for depression, anxiety, or these other common mental problems. And if it is not dealt with, that is when it develops into PTSD. And you will find this person has a lot of anxiety, they are trembling, they are unable to sleep. So some symptoms that would be described as depressive or described as anxiety. Now, the coping strategy, how do you deal with this? If your upbringing, you are not well equipped to deal with tragedy or sudden things, then you could be affected. If you have low self-esteem, such that you don't value yourself so much, when a sudden tragic incident happens to you, you may then fall weak of that situation. If you are then, you have a low perception of people around you, when it happens, you feel the need to help or exert yourself in that situation. That is emotional attachment, which then makes you more prone to developing PTSD. Yeah.
And when you talk of emotional attachment, sorry to interject, do you mean things like death of a loved one, the passing of a loved one?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
yes.
Sawa. Thank you very much, Nancy, for tackling that. Mark, signs and symptoms of PTSD.
There are two that come into mind. The first one being flashbacks. I've heard of cases where people have suffered from PTSD flashbacks, where that event that occurred keeps on running in your mind, maybe even nightmares sometimes. One symptom I think you may experience is you may feel nervous all the time, scared all the time, even in situations where you are not actually in a traumatic event. So I think those are the two most common signs and symptoms that I can think of. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark. Grace, will you care to expound?
Yes. Those are really good and important symptoms. And I think a lot of the movies that we've watched have also highlighted them, because most of the movies we watch also bring out aspects of PTSD. So generally, PTSD symptoms are quite a number, and they fall under 4 main categories. We have what we call intrusive memories of the event, which is where flashbacks come in. And these flashbacks can come at night when one is asleep, during the day when you're in an environment that either reminds you of the event, or even when you're just sitting and chilling, spending your time, you can have recurrence of those.
Sorry, as you continue, sorry to cut you short. Daytime, is that what you call a deja vu?
Not a deja vu.
It's not a deja vu.
Not a deja vu.
Okay.
Yes. It's an actual re-experience of what you went through. So it's not like a memory or a deja vu or that feeling where you feel like I've been here before. It's actually re-experiencing what happened during that time, when you're awake or when you're asleep or when just having a conversation. There are also what we call avoidance symptoms. Now, these ones are related to the event or the place at which the event happened. Say for example, someone was in an accident and they were in a matatu at that point. Avoidance symptoms can be avoiding public transport. It can be not even passing by the area which the accident occurred. So those are avoidance symptoms. Or actually even going to the point where you don't watch the news anymore, because when you watch the news, then you hear stories of accidents that have happened. So those are avoidance symptoms. And then we also have negative thoughts and emotional experiences. So that's where all the depression and the anxiety symptoms that Nancy had listed above previously fall under. And then we have actual physical experiences or reactions to the event itself. So these often come as they can come as panic attacks or attacks of panic, where the person goes through a panic attack. I don't know, how do I break it down? Labored breathing, crying, screaming, physical experiencing of the traumatic attack, where the person, even there are people who do not like being touched during that time. The people who just literally physically re-experience it. So those are just some of the symptoms, but they fall under a large category. When it comes to children, and this is something that also affects children, children express PTSD in different ways than adults. For them, it can come out during play. So if someone close to a child maybe died and there was death in the family, or they went through an accident or something like that, you may see it in their play. Either they'll draw things that are related to their accident, their dollies as they're playing, they'll be related to their accidents. They can have trouble sleeping, bedwetting. Events like that can also bring in signs and symptoms. Yeah.
You've mentioned bedwetting, but doesn't that also happen to adults?
Oh, yes, it does. Not just children. It can even happen to an adult.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Nancy, just a question before I ask you an actual question. Does bullying also contribute to a cause of PTSD?
Yes, it can, because you're traumatizing the person you're bullying. Yeah. And the person who is enforcing the bully, they're probably going through something at home. So they are passing on that trauma to somebody else.
All right.
Yeah. And also in adults, you may find someone who's gone through PTSD has anger issues. For children, they would express through bullying, but for an adult, they would have anger issues. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you've mentioned that, because now I'd like for you to answer how one should and can deal with PTSD. Yeah.
One thing is we need to be very self-aware of our emotional feelings, what you're feeling in your mind and what your body is telling you. Because Grace has mentioned the physical sensation. That is like the panic attack she's mentioned. I don't know if you've ever heard a woman say, whenever I see blood, my stomach, you get that feeling, or you feel like your heart has sunk in. That is because of an experience or what your mind is relating that experience to. So that is a physical sensation. So ask again your question.
My question is, how does and should one deal with PTSD?
So being very aware of your body, what your body is communicating to you, what your mind is telling you, and knowing that you're not behaving normally. So acknowledging that you're not behaving normally, and it's okay not to be okay. Seeking help. With PTSD, you need medication, you need psychotherapy, and you need to speak out. You need to share, because when you talk about an issue, you have gone halfway solving it. A lot of people draw strength by encouraging other people who are going through a similar thing that they have gone or they have previously experienced. But as you're doing that, you need to be strong enough. You need to have dealt with those unfinished businesses that make you experience that feeling, so that you can inform from an unbiased point of view. So psychotherapy is important, medication is important, and also sharing your story. The support structure is also important for a person, because if you don't have good support structure, then you may have challenges. Yes.
Nancy, thank you so much for answering that question. But I have something I'd like for you to explain to me, or rather even the viewers, a bit further. You've said medication, support system, and what else?
Psychotherapy.
Psychotherapy.
Yes.
Now, what happens? Because I'm so sure there are the people who are like, I can't open up.
Yeah.
I don't have the finances for the medicine, for the psychotherapy. How would you advise someone to go about it? Because I feel like with PTSD, just talking doesn't deal with it entirely.
Yes.
So what happens to an individual who can't access the professional assistance?
Of course, the biggest encouragement is for them to look for, if you can't afford to go to an individual, you can look for support groups. try and be as resourceful as you can. Earlier on, when Kefah was talking, he said of a support group that he started for the emergency response people. So with that group, I'm sure they can be able to pull resources and once in a while have somebody who can volunteer their services and take them through the therapy to overcome the trauma. So that is one way you can look at it. The other way is PTSD is a mental health condition, meaning it's a health challenge. Okay. So, case in point, if you have a growth in your head and it needs to be operated on, people downplay the seeking of mental health as a secondary need, but it's not. So that growth needs to be attended, because if it's not attended, it's gonna block so many other functionalities of your life. So the same way you would take care of a physical thing is the same way you should take care of what you cannot see but affects your mental health. So it's an encouragement to anyone who is going through a mental health challenge, and especially PTSD, because it will affect your relationships in future. The anger you express once in a while, the pulling away, the sensations you feel are not normal or ordinary things. And it may overwhelm a partner, it may overwhelm some friends of yours, and even family may be distressed because of you not dealing with PTSD. Yeah.
All right. Well, clearly, there's a lot that goes into PTSD. I think it's actually one of the heaviest topics we've handled so far. All right, Grace, my next question is to you. How do we support frontliners, especially during such a time with the pandemic? How do we support them? How do we help them?
I like what has been currently going on, even with the government, is that as they are helping out frontliners, as these people are putting themselves on edge every single day, taking care of people who have been affected and infected by COVID, still going to work, still being there, the first to deal with this, seeing the loss, seeing the death, seeing the impact it's having on people. It has also built a big resource in terms of training mental health care providers so that they can also be there to give these people support. So they have had a whole support group system that has been in play during this whole period. But at the same time, when they come home, it's not 100% guaranteed that they won't say these bad things. Because yes, as a frontliner, as a healthcare worker, as a person who provides security, you see so much bad. And when you're seeing so much bad in the world, it's like you're seeing people in their worst state. It tends to go with you wherever you go. So talking about it is just one way, providing mental health care support. That is what is being done. And I believe that that's what most companies ought to do, most hospitals ought to do, have support systems for their members of staff, have support systems for their emergency response teams. The same way policemen also have support systems at their level. I think IPOA has been doing a big job with that. But at the same time, when they come home to us, the community, being present for them, supporting them, in as much as they may not be able to come out and talk about it, just being there does a big role. Or encouraging them to support if they can, to talk about it if they can. So it's not a guarantee that they'll be able to talk about it, but when they can, just being there and listening plays a big role, even during this whole time.
All right. Now, before I go to Nancy for my next question, what happens now? We have spoken about the known frontliners. What about the neighborhood frontliner? Somebody like, let's say Mark, he's the one who's the frontliner in his family. How do I help someone like Mark? Yeah.
I think you just brought in a big aspect that we don't often think about. We don't often see the Mark when he's the one who's bringing, if we're robbed and he's the one who's stopping those guys. We don't see the people who respond fast in an accident on the road, the ones who call the phone, the one who go to pull out people from the car. So when you know of someone who has gone through an event that can be termed as traumatic, something that was terrifying, something that was unexpected and took on an emotional toll, talking about it helps a lot. And I know for most people, as I think Kefah would very much agree with, talking about what has happened to you as a traumatic event is really difficult. It's really painful. But talking about it often helps you come to terms with the fact that it happened. I like to tell my patients, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And this is the case when we're talking about PTSD. it gets worse before it gets better. The first time we talked about it, it's going to hurt. The next time we talk about it, it's going to hurt a little less. But in time, it gets better. But getting to that point of talking about it is the whole process.
Now, my question, Nancy, is also, how do we help and also help the families of the people who have the frontliners and also people who have been through PTSD? How do we help them? How do we prepare them to also be able to be in a position to help their loved ones?
So if your loved one is a frontliner, they are an emergency response person, or they work in a company that does that, say a police, an ambulance driver, a medic, or someone in the military, then you need to be very much aware of the stress that they are exposed to. And when someone comes and they don't want to talk or they seem edgy or anxious, allow them the space that they need, but also keep checking on them. Encourage them to seek professional help because they may share their story to you. And as we explained, PTSD can come from hearing about an experience of someone you like. So they can pass on the symptoms or the ailment to you by sharing what they have gone through. But if they want to talk about it, encourage them to talk about it with you. But if they are not able to talk about it with you, encourage them to seek professional help, where then they are taken through the proper method of coping with the post-traumatic stress disorder, because they may not have the option of changing their jobs. Now, that is on frontliners. We have cases or locally of people taking their lives. I am a victim where my brother took his life, and I was one who went to take him out of where he hanged himself. Okay, so now when you ask about the society and about the people, we need to stop labeling what happens to someone or to a certain family, because it is a tragic event and they are still processing. We need, as a society, to be supportive without judgment, because sometimes you judge so much. So I know how it feels, and I'd encourage people. How I got over it is, one, I acknowledge that it happened. It doesn't happen every day. The sensation I was talking about, I go through them from time to time, but I have had my fair share of therapy, and it has helped me a great deal. And the same thing has happened to my family. We've offered support to them to overcome that challenge. So understanding that it's not going to be an everyday occurrence, and you're not cast because the society labels you. I'm sure even when Kefah talked, one of his experience was the labels he probably got, and that fear or the stigma he actually went through. So we look at ourselves as one large family, as a society. Then now we break down to the family itself. Encourage someone to talk about their feelings, what they are experiencing, especially during that process, because when they harbor them inside, then it is going to manifest into something physiological or much worse. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for your explanation. Next, we're going to have Mark kindly answer for us unhealthy ways of dealing with trauma.
There are two common unhealthy ways of dealing with trauma, let alone PTSD in general. The first is, if you're not talking, you're not helping yourself. Nancy and Grace and even I have said a lot in this panel that if you're not sharing, you're not half solving your problems. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. Another unhealthy way of dealing with trauma is that if you're not facing your fear, you're not helping yourself. An example that I'll give is if you're from a situation where you were in an accident, maybe you are a biker, and now you don't even want to try and like ride your bike anymore or something like that. Sometimes you can talk to someone, maybe a therapist, and maybe this therapist may actually recommend that you actually face your fear by, let's say, like riding a bike downhill. So if you don't face a fear like that, I don't think you'll be helping yourself. In fact, you'll be making things even worse. I think that the specialist will carry on from here. Yeah.
He has passed on the button to you.
Okay. So most of the time when someone has gone through trauma, it affects their perception of the world. And I talked earlier, and Grace also reiterated the same, that someone would have anger issues. So you find someone who is facing all these things may look for an escape plan. So they may opt to go into drugs so that they can zone out, or alcoholism, or even in risky behaviors such that they can forget what they are facing. And that is unhealthy because you're drowning yourself in a stimulant, and it's not going to be beneficial for you in the long run. In the meantime, it may help you to zone out, but it's not beneficial. The other unhealthy way is not keeping contact with people around you, avoiding communication or relating to people. When you do that, then you're isolating yourself, and the symptoms may get worse. If you go through a panic attack or an anxiety without proper support, then you may struggle. He talked of facing your fears, and I'd like to also to mention, because I had Kefah say at one point he even was looking for a way where he will see blood or even go to a morgue. That is a technique that is used in therapy. When your therapist has helped you overcome or develop some coping skills, they may take you to a place where you face your fears, but under control. Because when you face your fears and you don't have control, then it may take you back to point zero, where you are re-experiencing or imagining what happened to what you're seeing. So facing your fears without control is unhealthy. Taking drugs, taking alcohol, unhealthy behaviors, keeping away from people, those would not really help you. So the alternative is true. The healthy ways of coping with PTSD is seeking medical attention, and also keeping close contacts, talking about it, joining support groups, and being there telling your story, because your experience will never be the same as somebody else, but it may also encourage a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I know I'm the lead panelist, but I'd like to add something to unhealthy ways. And sometimes even your support system could not be as supportive as you think they are, because I might come and tell Grace, "Wah, my cat died." And then she's like, "Just your cat."
Yeah.
People have bigger problems.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, it was my cat for 3 years. I loved it. It was my pet. I invested, So people should also not be very keen and quick to dismissing. And even when I come and share my story with you, don't be like, wait, baby, mi niko na mashida. But as we mentioned in previous episodes, that sometimes even listening to somebody else's problems helps you realize that you're not having it as hard as other people are. But it also doesn't change the fact that you are also going through it. Yeah, all right. Grace, healthy ways of dealing with PTSD and trauma.
I like the fact that this question was already highlighted by what Nancy said as she was mentioning the unhealthy ways. She also mentioned some healthy ones. But just as we mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, is that PTSD is a mental health condition. And by virtue of it being a mental health condition, it gets to a point where one needs to see a doctor or seek medical assistance for you to get proper treatment. One of the key important things that you need to remember, even as you're talking about mental health, is what determines abnormality. We have stressful events every single day, but there are points at which, when these stressful events occur, they affect us to a point where our lives become unmanageable. We become dysfunctional. And if you notice that your life has gotten to a point where you're not able to cope anymore, or you're not able to deal anymore, it's always advised that you seek medical help, that you seek medical assistance. And at that point, seeing a psychiatrist is very key for you, one, to get a proper diagnosis that yes, what you're going through is indeed PTSD, because there are different ways of dealing and managing PTSD. one of which is medication. So there are people who will need medication to deal with that. All the symptoms that we've talked about earlier, the anxiety, the sleepless nights, the not being able to sleep at night because you're having memories, the intrusive thoughts, the physical reactions to these traumatic events do need medication at some point. And the medication plays the role of helping your body normalize so that even as you're going through therapy, the process is less intense. It's less traumatic. You're able to deal better. So as in addition to the medication, going for therapy also plays a really key role. There are different techniques that we as therapists are going to use, as counselors we're going to use. One of them is listen as you share your story. But in addition to that, you need to learn skills to help you continue living your life. We had Kefah talk about how difficult it will get for him to actually work, and he'd drown his sorrows in alcohol. We don't want people to go using substances to deal. They need to learn skills that will help them deal at that point so that it doesn't get to that point, where it's affecting your work, it's affecting your day-to-day. Coping skills, anxiety management skills, going through the ordeal and coming to terms with the fact that it happens, but also teaching your body that it happened then, it's not happening now. Because when you're calling to PTSD, it's the actual re-experiencing of what happened. So relearning and having your brain and your body know that, no, it's not happening right now. That accident, it's not happening right now. That fire, it's not happening right now. That death is not happening right now. Those are skills that we need to the body to relearn so that when it remembers, it's just a memory. It doesn't trigger a response by the body. So those skills, as well as self-care, as well as therapy, are taught. And that's how to healthily manage PTSD. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Grace, for that wonderful explanation. Next, we're going to have Nancy. What leads to the choice of unhealthy ways of dealing with PTSD?
I'd say lack of information. One, if you don't have knowledge of where to start, then you don't know how to go about it. And that's why forums like this are very important, because we are putting it in people's faces close to you so that you can know where to seek for help. Number two, lack of support. If you don't have a good support structure, or it discourages you from seeking support, they tell you it is normal what you're experiencing, that could be one other thing that makes you not seek support. The other thing is the fear of the unknown. Sometimes someone who has gone through a traumatic event feels as though that's the worst it can be, and so they don't want to take the risk of trying to experience something else. They could get stuck to that feeling. Sometimes, like depression is addictive, so they could get stuck to the feeling. And also, I'd say your upbringing, how well you are taught to express yourself. There are people who have fear of expressing themselves because of probably the role they play in the society. And this is another factor that could make someone not seek support when you've gone through trauma. Then there is a fear of being in people's faces, exposing your fears, and people learning so much about you. That could be something that affects you. And also, not to forget, financial. There are people who are not financially capable to pay for therapy, and so they will hold back because they don't feel it's a necessity to go for help. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy, for answering the question, and also all of you. And now that we are done with today's topic, what is your parting word as we end today's?
One word: talk, communication. Because sometimes, and I've said it a lot, so I don't think I need to rephrase it again, but if you talk to someone about any tragic event that you've gone through, as recently as that, it's important you talk to someone, and maybe when you talk to that person, your problem will be solved. Because if you keep it to yourself, you're making things worse for yourself. So I think that's my parting shot.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark. Nancy, please.
Awareness. Awareness is very key. Knowing what your thoughts are telling you, what your body is feeling, and how you're behaving. Having that awareness would help you even deal with the challenge. There are people who, because of the trauma, after some time, they then are able to deal with the challenges and they can get by, but that does not put aside the need for professional help. So awareness. And let me add another thing, acknowledgement. We need to acknowledge that these are common things that happen. And if someone comes to you and they are trying to talk to you about their experience, try and be supportive to them, because they then are acknowledging their awareness. So once you acknowledge them, then you're encouraging them to talk about their challenges.
Grace?
PTSD is something that any one of us can go through. At any point in our lives, a bad thing can happen. A traumatic thing can change the very course of our lives. And coming to terms with the fact that your reaction, that stress, that feeling of bereavement is a normal response to an abnormal situation is very key. And us understanding that talking about it, getting help is something we all need at some point. It's very key when having this discussion. If you've gone through something that you felt through your balance, talk to someone. If you start noticing that after something occurred, after you went through a terrifying or a traumatic incident, you're noticing basic things like changes in your sleep pattern, changes in your mood, changes in your appetite. You're avoiding people, you're avoiding the event, the area at which it happened. You having memories of what happened, and this is more than a month after the event has occurred. When society expects you to have healed or gotten better, and you notice that you're still re-experiencing things, get help. We at Chiromo Mental Health Hospital are here for you. There are a lot of people out there, not just us, who are there to support, who are there for you. Reach out. Get some help before it gets worse. Yeah.
That's all we had for today, discussing about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and how to go about it, how to help each other, how to even help yourself. But what I would kindly encourage us is to be there for one another, regardless of your situation. Honestly, you never know who you're helping just by being there for them. Even if you won't talk, be a shoulder to lean on. Don't brush off people, because today it's me, tomorrow it's going to be you. Or even if it's not you, it's going to be somebody that you care about. And we really don't want to be a society that regrets when it's already, we tuanze kusema, oh, I wish I did, oh, I should have listened. We don't want regrets in our society. And since we're living in a very different time, let's just work to be there for one another. It is of importance, not only now during COVID, but even after. All right? I have been your host, Sylvia Kuria. Next week, we have another guest who's going to share their story on a few things that they have been through. And stay tuned. Thank you.